Hi, my name is Megan Simonelli. I'm one of the co-directors of the Title Sequence Director's Cut. I worked alongside one of my other co-directors, Kirsten Lupinek, in order to create this project. And so within the CCR, I will be going over the processes that I went through to make sure that this project came out the way it did. So, psychological thrillers are a subset genre of horror where someone is usually portrayed as being crazy or mentally insane, they're unstable, and so psychological thrillers base a lot on the fact that they're more realistic than horrors. They don't include those demons or ghosts or monsters that are seen in most classic horrors. A lot of psychological thrillers try to highlight the different possibilities that could happen with mentally insane people, and it shows almost a realistic side of horror that could possibly happen in real life but usually doesn't. So we try to represent this in our title sequence by making sure our main character was very plain but also to the point where she did look mentally insane. She didn't have any monster qualities and she didn't look like a demon, but she did look like she had a couple nights of no sleep with her dark eye circles, and she looked very menacing with the grin at the end. We did in fact challenge the psychological thriller stereotype that most women aren't part of the action. Most women are portrayed as in need of saving or they're in distress. We also challenged the concept of the story coming from a narrator of an outsider's point of view, because in most other psychological thrillers, the main problem is caused by an outside force that comes into their lives. And so we challenged this in a way that our narrator was the unreliable narrator that we see her go from stable to mentally unstable. For our mise en scène, Kirsten and I took a long time to look at how we wanted to symbolically represent our setting to be part of our character, and so we chose to do it at the racquetball court at my workplace because it was 4 white walls with a gel door and a glass door, and it represented the isolation she has from the outside world. And it's also meant to represent her mind because she is supposed to be stuck in this writer's block. She's stuck in this place of wanting to not make any mistakes on her next work. And so we can see that she never leaves the room, and that being that that room is completely empty, it shows her lack of ideas. And it also puts emphasis on the props, such as the papers in the room, to show that those are the only things that are in her mind at the moment and that that's all she's focusing on. She also has dark makeup on and dark clothing to show that she is in this depressed, kind of sad mental state that she wants to get this project done. With the cinematography, we had a lot of close-ups or long shots of our character because a lot of other psychological thrillers like to highlight the small actions that the character did, so we wanted to emphasize on that a lot. We also used some candid angles to show the offset from being perfect or centered. The editing and the transitions were very smooth in this. We didn't want any cartoonish kind of transitions between each action. We wanted it to transition into which one action would go to the next one, and if it was going from a different action, we would have it dissolve into that new action to kind of bring up that new idea of something else happening. For the sound, we wanted something kind of creepy but also emphasizes on the little actions that she does. And I found this song by Lana Del Rey, which was a beautiful song called Video Games, which is a little Easter egg because it's video games and it's the director's cut, and she's a director and she does stuff with videos, so that's a little Easter egg there. But this song really honed in on the harp playing at certain times, which was a great effect on her ripping the paper at that time, or the blood dripping in the sink at that time. Now, with the titles, most psychological thrillers have very simple titles. They're not splotchy or cursive-y. They're just very generic Comic Sans. So we tried to implement that as well into our title sequence by having a very stick kind of title. Our title sequence showed the branding of showing off the struggles that a lot of people who work in Hollywood have to face, because their jobs are never safe. They have to continuously come up with new and great ideas that may not be seen as great ideas by other people. So we showed that in our title sequence, and so a good production company for us was Entertainment One, because not only did they work with other psychological thrillers, but they had that same idea in mind of showing this brand, but also through the ways that we wanted, like keeping people on the edge of their seats and keeping them enticed and making sure that people keep up with the action but are also asking questions about what's going on. Entertainment One has produced movies such as Eye in the Sky and Insidious 3, which have both been very successful psychological thrillers and have both kept viewers on the edge of their seats. We were also planning to have the company Entertainment One split the cost of distribution with another company called Summit, and Summit has also worked with many psychological thrillers. It has also been successful. When researching, we found that the target audience for most psychological thrillers are young adults to middle-aged adults, because a lot of the storyline and the plot that goes on in psychological thrillers are most likely a little too mature, or they won't be understood by a younger audience under the age of 13, and most of the elderly would not want to go through a lot of this trauma or a lot of these high-stake events. I can most definitely say that I'm leaving this class a way better filmmaker than I did coming into it. Because at the beginning of this class, I had no clue about anything. I didn't realize the importance of the setting, the costumes, the lighting, the coloring, the sound, the volume of the sound, where the sound is placed, the transitions between each film, the angles that each scene is taken from. I had no idea that all of that is what made the tone, the message, the brand. It basically made the entire story. I had come into the class with a little experience with iMovie, in which I had edited our history project together, which was a music video, and I had done some other iMovie work with another class when we were trying to make a small short film, but that was mainly it. I only had experience in iMovie, and it was very limited because I had only used it on my phone. A couple projects that we had done throughout the year that really helped me get on my feet with this project, including a video that my friend Akosi and I made for the freshmen coming into the Cambridge program. It really helped with finding out more about the editing process and seeing how to put voiceovers over certain videos, how to arrange certain scenes to make things look sense, to kind of set up that storyline of what to do when putting together a film. I have a lot of important lessons that I've learned coming out of this. Kirsten and I had a problem with trying to make things simple. We were trying to overcomplicate a lot of things in our beginning title sequence. We wanted to cram a lot of plot into it because we fell in love with our plot. And we realized a little bit later on in the editing process that this was not a story. This was the prologue of a story. This was the beginning. So we should have planned that out more, and I realize that now, that we should have planned according to the storyboard. We didn't have a cohesive storyboard to really guide us along this path, and that, looking back at it now, I've learned that that's a very important step, is to follow a storyboard. And even though most of our takes were by accident, we got lucky by having a lot of takes of the same paper tearing. But having a storyboard really helps when trying to come up with these simple things and not overcomplicate your title sequence. It's also very important that we didn't leave this to the last minute. We filmed it early enough to where we came back and we did the sound and editing. We didn't realize that editing was probably the longest bit of the entire project. I expected it to be the shooting, but I realized that shooting only took 2 days, editing took 3 weeks, because it's all about finding the right frames and the right scenes to put in, and then every time we would look at it, we'd revise it, so we needed to completely look at it one way and then another way. I also learned a lot during the filming process itself, because I was not meant to be the cinematographer for our project. Kirsten was a pro at the camera work, but because we had casted her, that job fell to me. And so some important lessons that I took from that was that you need to make sure that you never move on unless you look at the last thing you got and you make sure that nothing, or that everything is the way you want it. There were multiple shots that Kirsten and I got that were possibly tilted the wrong way, or the angle was off, or I was, like, my finger was covering part of the camera. I was a mess of a cinematographer, and I learned that that there is a camera cap, and you have to take that off before filming, or else you're gonna film a black screen. I also learned that you want to take multiple takes of the same exact shot, even if that means resetting the scene and going back, because it's very important that you get it in that exact position that you want it. For example, there was one shot that Kirsten and I loved, but we accidentally kept the tripod in it and we only got one take of it. We came back to the editing process and we realized that we couldn't use that footage because there was a tripod in the corner of it. As for the sound of our title sequence, I had to use Audacity in order to fix the Lana Del Rey song to make it an instrumental. So I had to go into Audacity, which I had used in the beginning of the year, and I had to isolate the vocals and remove them in order to make it an instrumental. From there, I had to use Adobe Premiere for the first time. So a big part of this title sequence was towards the end, where Kirsten is seen in two different places in the same frame. One behind the little jail door and one in the foreground of her right in front of the camera, and she looks up smiling. This is a very hard scene to film because not only did we have to utilize tripods and selfie sticks in order to keep the camera stabilized, we also had to make sure that it was in the same exact place so that when I was lining it up for editing, it would fit right on top of each other. Because if the camera was not in place, it would edit together to where the floor would almost look like it was in two different places. So we had to ensure that nothing went wrong, and of course, the camera did fall. This film was honestly a blast to research and produce. It was a lot of fun working with my co-director, Kirsten Lubinek, and I learned a lot about psychological thrillers in general and about different softwares like Adobe Premiere and Audacity. Thank you for watching!